My beloved child, your spirit is weary. I know you've been seeking healing through noise, comfort through distractions, but the ache remains, doesn't it? That ache is not your enemy, it's your compass. And today I am drawing near to give you what the world never could: truth, peace, direction. This moment is sacred, so stay close and listen till the end, because what I reveal today has the power to reset your course. You've come too far to turn away. Now lean in. This is the moment that changes everything. This is not just a moment, it is your divine intervention. I have watched and stayed silent long enough while they used your trust, took your peace, and twisted your kindness into weakness. But no more. You thought I was ignoring it, didn't you? You questioned why I didn't step in sooner. You cried at night, wondering why your prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling and why I let them mock your faith. I want you to know I was watching it all. Every secret word, every scheme planned behind your back, every time they smiled at you while hiding a knife. I saw it not just as your savior, but as your defender. I saw the games, the gaslighting, the betrayal. And though I didn't strike them down when you wanted me to, I wrote everything down. Today, I'm tearing that page out. It's over. What they were allowed to do was never a sign of their power. It was a part of my patience. But now my patience has fulfilled its purpose, and the line has been drawn. I am no longer letting them pretend you belong in the same place they left you. Their influence ends here. Their ability to delay you, discourage you, and distract you is done. I'm not going to debate it with anyone, and neither should you. You won't need proof to walk away, permission to heal, or applause to rise. You will know it's me, because the peace that follows this moment will be undeniable. I let it go on until now because I needed you to see what evil truly looks like in friendly faces. But now that you've seen clearly, now that your heart has learned the difference between counterfeit and calling, I'm shutting the door. You've cried enough, wondered enough, and suffered enough. Let them talk, let them twist, let them assume. It no longer matters. I am lifting you from their grasp. I am restoring everything they touched with toxic hands, and I won't let them get close enough to do it again. Walk away from what I'm removing. Don't touch what I've condemned. Don't go back to explain anything. You owe no one a response for the redemption I've planned. It's over. I'm saying it with finality because your breakthrough needs space, and their presence only delays it. I am drawing a divine boundary around your soul. I'm cleansing your memory from the pain they planted. I'm wiping your timeline clean of the damage they left behind. You won't just survive this, you will shine through it. But only if you listen now. Only if you obey this one command without compromise. It's over. Stop. Don't give them access to your emotions. Don't let them enter your thoughts again. I have seen enough, and I am releasing you from the war you didn't start. Moving forward, I will be the judge. I will be the justifier. And I will be the one who lifts you higher than they ever imagined possible. This is your line in the sand, your moment of separation, your spiritual exit from what was never meant to follow you. This is over. Why are your hands still trembling? What are you still holding that you should have already dropped? You have been carrying burdens I never authored, expectations I never approved, timelines I never designed, and emotional weights that were never meant to be your portion. You held on because you thought letting go would mean defeat. You convinced yourself that if you just held out a little longer, things might turn around, people might change, circumstances might soften. But child, the strength you used to carry what was never assigned to you has only exhausted your spirit. I never told you to prove your faith by how much pain you could tolerate. I never required your devotion to be measured by how long you could endure being ignored, misunderstood, or misused. You kept going because you believed that pleasing meant suffering endlessly. But I need you to understand, obedience doesn't mean martyring yourself to someone else's indecision. And loyalty doesn't mean staying rooted in places I have already left. You have mistaken your endurance for my instruction. While I honor your willingness to persist, I'm also here to break the lie that suffering endlessly is the same as being spiritually strong. There is no reward in clinging to people I have released. There is no crown in preserving things I have already pruned. You are not being faithful by remaining in what's finished. You are only becoming a prisoner to what I freed you from. Hear me. This is not the test anymore. The test is whether you can trust me enough to stop, to drop the resentment, to lay down the obsession with the outcome, to quit measuring your worth by how long you can stay hurt without collapsing. You passed what you were supposed to learn. Now you are only harming yourself by continuing to carry what no longer carries you. Your arms are aching spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. And I want you to understand something deeper than before. My spirit cannot rest in a place that refuses to release. As long as you grip what I have removed, you are shielding yourself from what I'm trying to give. Stop trying to heal while still clinging to what infected you. Stop trying to pray for peace while preserving the pain. I am not asking for another day of your strength. I am asking for a moment of your surrender. Not partial, not temporary, but full release. I need you to open your hands and set everything down that does not resemble my peace. Yes, even the relationships you hoped would one day prove you right. Even the decisions that made you feel noble while you stayed and suffered. Even the grudges you secretly keep in your thoughts, rehearsing what they did and what they never said. Lay it down, all of it. You have reached the point of spiritual dehydration because you've been feeding a desert season I never told you to plant in. You kept it alive with your hope, your prayer, and your patience. But I never told you to make it bloom. I told you to move forward. The truth is, if you are still hurting this deeply, still spinning in emotional circles, still hoping something changes one day, then you haven't truly released it. It ends now. There is too much waiting for you on the other side of surrender. I can't let you waste another breath convincing yourself it's noble to be stuck. No, it's time to stop. Not pause, not reflect, just stop right now. You've carried this longer than I ever wanted for you. Let me carry you now instead. A holy finality, listen. Feel the atmosphere change as I speak, because every syllable vibrates with a holy finality you cannot afford to ignore. The valley you've trudged through, the nights that stretched like endless corridors, the staggering weight of questions no one else could hear, all of it meets its expiration in this exact breath. I have issued a celestial decree, and creation itself obeys my command. The torment tied to this particular road is terminated. Understand the urgency of that truth before another heartbeat passes. You have treated agony like a destiny, assuming that if you could just withstand it long enough, something good would emerge from the rubble. But pain is not a sacrament. It was never meant to be your lifelong companion. Nothing about perpetual suffering resembles the kingdom I prepared for you. I did not knit your soul together to be shredded daily by memories, betrayals, or uncertainties. You keep thinking you must cross some mythical finish line of endurance before I intervene. Yet I was always standing beside you, waiting for the precise instant to announce an end to the bleeding season. That instant is now. Every angle that once cut you open is losing its edge. Every oppressive memory is shrinking under the weight of my word. The same grief that used to knock the wind from your lungs is already bowing to my authority. You can almost hear its chains clatter to the ground. I don't merely patch wounds. I rewire stories. I don't simply call for a ceasefire. I confiscate the weapons aimed at your peace. The casualties you fear are being reversed into testimonies no darkness can refute. Mark this moment. The chapter titled Constant Ache has reached its period. Step away from it like someone walking out of a burning building that suddenly collapses behind you, ashes blowing harmlessly at your heels. The accelerant was never your weakness. It was every lie whispered that told you despair was part of discipleship. Enough of that distortion. I am the shepherd who leads to quiet water, not bottomless pits. Let this announcement thunder in your bloodstream. The misery contract is nullified. Relief is not tentative or conditional. It is signed, sealed, and executed by nail-scarred hand. You don't need to rehearse old conversations or anticipate another ambush. The path that once felt like shards beneath bare feet is becoming smooth ground beneath sandals of purpose. My spirit is laying fresh tracks toward horizons untouched by yesterday's hostility. Hurry, align your thoughts with my verdict so the residue doesn't cling to you. Stop memorializing your ordeal. Start memorizing my promise. Everything that survives after this proclamation will be fuel for joy, not evidence of torture. I set my signature across the sky as proof, painting dawn with colors that couldn't exist while gloom dominated your view. Yes, the world around you may still carry echoes of chaos, but your internal landscape is under new governance. From this instant forward, emotional hemorrhage is replaced by holy momentum. Hear me clearly. I am not suggesting gradual recovery. I am commanding instant release. Arguments you lost sleep forming will never need to be spoken because vindication is arriving on wings swifter than rumor. What once dictated your schedule, appointments with sorrow, meetings with dread, has been deleted from my calendar for you. Step where I step, and you'll notice the ground no longer quakes. Speak what I speak, and you'll discover language saturated with life rather than lament. The journey ahead will still require courage, but it will not demand constant pain as payment. The difference is decisive. Courage draws from hope, while chronic hurt siphons your very will to breathe. I am transplanting the former where the latter ruled. Grasp that shift before doubt tries to bargain for another minute. This is not negotiable. My decision stands. The tormenting path is closed forever, barred by the same authority that calmed storms and raised tombstones to testimony. Forward we go, child, into terrains where peace is not an occasional visitor, but the permanent resident of your spirit. The end of a cycle. Pay attention. Time-sensitive thunder rolls through your awareness this instant, carrying a verdict no power can appeal. The unfinished story others repeatedly dragged into the present has been locked shut by my scarred hands, sealed with authority no mortal tool can pry open. They rummage through your memories like burglars revisiting a scene, unnerving incidents long forgiven, reciting missteps, replaying regret, insisting yesterday's lineup of failures still dictated tomorrow's potential. That predatory habit ends in this breath. My seal is not symbolic, it is structural. Pages have fused together like stone under divine fire, and the hinge of that narrative will never pivot again. Hear the sound of iron bolts sliding home. Each clang announces your emancipation from unwanted commentary, persuasive guilt trips, and manipulative nostalgia. I am shutting the way back so completely that even your own curiosity cannot escort you inside. The impulse to explain yourself further, defend old decisions, or relitigate ancient conversations will wither, because conversation requires access, and access is finished. Do not attempt to salvage souvenirs from those archives. Touching them will burn like open flame, for I have rendered them radioactive to your destiny. Urgency remains because a sealed past automatically initiates a moving future. Do not loiter near the archive like someone hovering outside a locked vault. Momentum is ministry today. I have mapped new routes across landscapes you have yet to imagine, and your instructions wait farther along those pristine tracks. Lingering births fascination, and fascination is fertile soil for disobedience. Obedience always faces forward. Therefore, pack lightly. Memories possess mass, but vision is wind at your back. My spirit is outfitting you with instruments calibrated for horizons, not rear-view recollections. Let me clarify. I did not secure that chronicle merely to hush critics. I secured it to shield your miracle from contamination. Miracles germinate only where yesterday's fingerprints cannot smudge today's blueprint. By sealing their access, I guarantee the soil around your promise stays uncontaminated by doubt. Soon, fruit will appear that contradicts every accusation, and your life itself will proclaim an eloquence no rebuttal could match. Until then, march ahead under the banner of finality I have raised. The lock is my signature. The chain is my covenant. The silence behind you is the new sound of victory. Remember this admonition. Fascination with closed doors is a tactic of the adversary to immobilize warriors designed to conquer fresh ground. Do not waste a glance on hinges I have soldered shut. Instead, tune your senses to the rising roar of possibilities cresting the horizon, because the kingdom advances at the pace of your next obedient step, and hesitation is now the only sabotage capable of slowing you. Acceleration and peace. Urgent alert. Feel my voice surge like a siren across every stalled corner of your life. The slow-motion spiral that kept siphoning your courage ends under this divine proclamation. For too long, you stood in spiritual traffic, clutching instructions yet forced to watch opportunity inch forward while your heart pounded against invisible barricades. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Doors half opened, then froze. Resources trickled like drought-stricken streams, and your own motivation began eroding in that sluggish undertow. Understand, none of those bottlenecks were bigger than my sovereignty. They existed because I permitted time to expose what speed would have concealed. The purpose is complete, and therefore every spiritual red light holding you in place has flipped to green. I disallow further lag. Bureaucratic walls that redirected your applications, outer rhythms that buried your voice, and opinions that throttled your reach, all lose jurisdiction this instant. Even ideological rhythms that felt stuck, exhaustion refusing to lift, creativity hiding behind fog, are rebooting under my command. The cosmos recognizes the decree. Acceleration without whiplash, advancement without compromise, momentum without relapse. Yet heed this warning. Momentum unused mutates into new stagnation. When the signal changes, hesitate not. Tack courage in your first stride, because a delayed departure creates a vacuum quickly filled by decisive faith or fresh distraction. Choose faith. Do not query every green light or hunt for hidden traps. Those belong to the expired system. Flow with me. Meetings that took months to schedule will materialize in days. Answers once buried in unanswered emails will surface with startling clarity. Funds withheld by indecision will channel toward you through unlikely tributaries. But remember, velocity requires prioritization. Do not drag side projects never sanctioned by my spirit into this surge. Extra weight breeds new gridlock. Travel lean. I am recalibrating clocks around you so that postponed dreams realign with present readiness. Chronology bends under my fingerprints. Missed chances will circle back dressed in better timing, and too late will bow to right now. Let gratitude, not surprise, shape your response. Astonishment wastes precious minutes. Instead, greet each rapid breakthrough like a soldier hearing long-awaited marching orders, with swift obedience, clear focus, and disciplined joy. Look closely. You will notice that while external movement escalates, inner stillness deepens. It is my hallmark. Progress and peace intertwine. Anxiety was married to delay. When delay dies, anxiety loses its partner. Feel the unforced assurance. Rising, breathing becomes easier. Deadlines lose their power to terrorize, and laughter escapes your chest unannounced. That serenity is not a lull, it is oxygen for high-altitude calling. Breathe deeply. We ascend quickly from here. One more instruction. Speak life into the spaces where procrastination once mocked you. Declare completion over drafts, clarity over confusion, and boldness over timid starts. Your words aligned with mine, pave express lanes through terrain that used to feel like swamps. Angels excel in environments where faith refuses to dawdle. Assign them tasks through confident confession and watch them escort provisions ahead of schedule. Finally, memorialize this pivot so tomorrow's challenges cannot rewrite today's victory. Etch it, journal, psalm, testimony, whatever cements revelation inside you, because the memory of my swiftness will inoculate you against future doldrums. The magnetic pull of delay has been severed, and its permission revoked. Step, speak, build, heal, pursue. Every verb previously stuck in limbo now finds full conjugation in real time. Go forward. The timetable of heaven has synchronized with your destiny. Reconditioning and release. Hear this blazing directive. Retreat is no longer an option. Relapse has lost its coordinates, and every exit that once funneled you into familiar hurt now disintegrates under my watch. The landscape behind you has been scorched of old invitations. Those late-night messages that reopened wounds of misery, those sentimental playlists that restamped outdated emotions, those looping daydreams that painted toxic people in nostalgic colors, all erased like chalk beneath a sudden downpour. I have redrawn the map of your interior world, cutting dead-end alleys from its design so thoroughly that even memory must ask permission to linger. Understand the gravity. Wounds concealed inside excuses will no longer masquerade as harmless nostalgia. Each lingering excuse will sting like fire until you drop it. What broke you lived off your willingness to revisit its spiraling thoughts, habitual sighs, and reflex apologies. But I am severing the oxygen line. When temptation offers the counterfeit comfort of just one more look, you will feel an immediate, holy discomfort shiver through your spirit, a siren reminding you that repetition would equal self-harm. Do not argue with this alarm. Let it shepherd you forward like a pillar of flame in a desert night. I am barricading the gateways of regression, not out of control, but out of covenant love, because your future carries assignments that cannot coexist with the shards of former bondage. Old patterns, once disguised as personality quirks, have been unmasked as parasites. Their eviction is non-negotiable. Should nostalgia attempt to sweet-talk you, remember the scent of familiarity was laced with the toxin of slow destruction. I have tasted your tears enough times to outlaw the recipe that caused them. You may feel the phantom tug of previous routines, certain streets, certain voices, certain hours on the clock, but phantoms fade under daylight, and I have swung the sun high over your path. Keep walking, even if muscle memory screams to turn around. Screams are simply proof the chain has snapped. And know this, every step you take into territory free of old fractures widens the distance so dramatically that soon even the echo of that broken season will lose its shape. I am not merely rescuing you from danger. I am reconditioning your reflexes so that danger looks dull compared to destiny. You will crave wholeness like lungs crave air, and the thought of resurrection will thrill you more than recycled heartbreak ever did. Let this become your anthem, forward until freedom feels ordinary, not by might, not by human resolve, but by the surge of grace pulsing at your heels. You are crossing a threshold where relapse cannot follow, where shame cannot renew its lease, where self-sabotage cannot forge counterfeit keys. Cross it without hesitation. Momentum will greet you with open arms, and I will meet you in each fresh mile with resources that only reveal themselves to travelers who refuse to reverse. Keep moving. The rubble behind you no longer speaks your language. The cleansing of sorrow. Feel the tremor of my compassion rip through every hidden chamber where unshed tears have pooled like heavy water behind a cracked dam. This is the moment the pressure is relieved before the structure bursts. I am issuing a direct summons to every stifled sob, every word you swallowed for fear of sounding weak, every nocturnal sigh you muffled beneath blankets so no one would hear. Come forward and be acknowledged. I never designed your chest to be a vault for sorrow. I fashioned it to resonate with praise, and the two cannot occupy the same chambers indefinitely. You have tiptoed through days pretending resilience, while internal waves crashed against the fragile walls of composure, convincing yourself that maturation equals silence, that sanctification equals stoicism, that faith equals an unending smile, even as anguish gnawed at its edges. Cast off that false gospel this instant. Real courage is not the ability to conceal pain. It is the resolve to bring pain to the one capable of transforming it. Lay your hand over your own heartbeat and notice how each thump slows when truth is finally allowed to stand in daylight. That calm is my presence enveloping your vulnerability, not judgment looming over your weakness. I invite you to exchange secrecy for sacred conversation. I sit beside you right now, prepared to absorb every unanswered ache like sunlight pulling dew from grass. Your lament will not offend me, nor will it delay destiny. Depressed grief was the true delay. Speak honestly. Tell me about the disappointment no one else thought was a big deal, the lonely victories no one clapped for, the betrayal you're afraid to admit still stings. I can already feel the tides shifting as your defenses lower. Blood pressure eases, shoulders drop, inhalations deepen. This is not emotional indulgence, it is spiritual detox. Toxic residue must leave so living water can circulate freely. Let the tears fall. They water the soil of tomorrow's gladness. Let the groan surface. It is the sound of chains dissolving. You have believed that releasing emotion makes you regress, but suppression was the true reversal. Expression propels. I will not allow you to drown in unsaid sentences any longer. Even if others dismiss your narrative, I archive every syllable. Pour it out. I recycle pain into wisdom, sorrow into psalms the enemy hates to hear. And while you unburden, notice how I simultaneously thread hope through the spaces grief vacates, weaving fresh expectancy into the tapestry of your thoughts so seamlessly that by the time your last tear slides away, joy already occupies the seat where despair once sprawled. That is my craftsmanship. Pain exits, praise enters in one continuous motion. But heed this instruction. Do not rush the process. Give your emotions their full say so healing is thorough, not cosmetic. Surface-level relief risks relapse. Deep release guarantees lasting restoration. If you feel tremors of shame, rebuke them. They are trespassers. Vulnerability inside a covenant is never disgraceful. It is worship. And know this, I do not merely wipe cheeks. I mentor hearts. As you empty yourself of silent anguish, I will tutor you in rejoicing that feels authentic, not forced. Laughter will one day rise from the same lungs that heaved sobs, and it will sound richer because it echoes through chambers once hollowed by grief. This is the turning point where quiet agony becomes audible liberation. Welcome it. Embrace it. Enough pretending. Let authentic release begin and watch your soul regain its full voice, while my spirit orchestrates melody from every note of your honest cry. Breaking the loop. Stop pacing. Divine authority just entered the very loop that's haunted you for far too long. And when I arrive, repetition loses its power. This isn't just the end of a pattern. This is the unraveling of a system that's tried to convince you it was permanent. The same scenarios that circled back year after year, cloaked in new faces, slightly altered words, different timelines, but identical endings. All of it collapses under the presence of my intervention. You've cried over this rhythm as if it were destiny, but it was always a distortion. I watched you go in circles, not because I was absent, but because I wanted you to see that no human effort, no matter how careful, sacrificial, or strategic, could break what required a divine invasion. And now, child, I am here. My footsteps don't echo inside cycles, they shatter them. Every time you said, "How did I end up here again?" was a cry from the depths of your discernment, trying to make sense of spiritual interference. You were never meant to navigate alone. I have not come to coach you through another round. I have come to bring finality. That familiar emotional spiral, that internal tug of war, those relational ruts that masqueraded as chances to fix things, they no longer have access to you. You were not meant to manage chaos with poise. You were meant to walk out of it with power. I am breaking the loop with my voice, and you will know it's me, because you will begin to feel resistance where you once felt temptation. The bait won't shine the same. The pull won't pull as hard. It's not just growth, it's my hand redirecting your steps mid-stride. Be alert. Your body will still remember old rhythms and try to lead you back. But I've installed barriers your spirit will now detect. Pay attention to the internal tension when invitations come clothed in familiarity. That's your warning siren. Don't dismiss it. Don't spiritualize the itch to go back. Don't label disobedience as compassion. This is the hour for precise alignment, not emotional gambling. Where you used to settle out of exhaustion, I now give you strength to rise. Where you used to compromise out of loneliness, I now release you into spaces where company comes without cost. Where your patterns tried to convince you pain was proof of purpose, I now insert clarity that silences confusion. Understand the weight of what's happening. This isn't behavioral change. This is an exodus. Cycles survive on your cooperation, but once heaven declares interference, they collapse. You don't need another self-help plan. You don't need to try harder. What you need is happening now. My authority replacing your anxiety, my truth canceling every lie that said you were bound to repeat history. You will not loop again. You will not explain again. You will not fall into the same delay dressed as opportunity again. I am resetting your inner compass, so what once seemed magnetic will now repel you. Do not mourn what you're repelled by. Celebrate it. It means the cycle's roots have been severed. I will even restore time you thought was wasted, repurpose lessons you thought were pointless, and transform past entanglements into future discernment. This is not a small shift. This is the line between wilderness and promise. The days of running in place are gone. From here, you move in straight lines, in God-ordained directions, and every step forward will carry the momentum of freedom that only comes when I step in and declare, this is where it ends. A holy gag order. Power alert. Unfasten every echo that once wrapped itself around your destiny like static, because a heavenly gag order just silenced the commentators who tried to script your tomorrow without my endorsement. Their vocabulary, seasoned with doubt, drenched in jealousy, and sharpened as covert weapons, has been revoked at the gate of your unfolding story. I, the author of your timeline, have rescinded their broadcasting rights and reassigned network control to my spirit alone. Listen closely. From this heartbeat onward, every strategy built on their sentences collapses like scaffolding with its bolts removed. They can post, tweet, vent, or whisper, but their sound waves will dissipate before reaching the command center of your calling. You once cringed at their verdicts, adjusted your posture to avoid their sarcasm, and second-guessed breakthroughs because their cynicism dripped into your imagination. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. Those reflexes die in this moment. I am placing a firewall around your inner ear. Malignant commentary strikes, fizzles, and falls without imprinting on your thought patterns. This isn't selective hearing born of pride. It's divine filtration designed to preserve momentum. While they scramble for an audience, you will notice heaven amplifying my guidance. Instructions will land with crystalline clarity. Creativity will surge without apology, and confidence will bloom where caution formerly ruled. The same individuals who labeled your courage as recklessness now find their megaphones unplugged. Do not waste fuel explaining how the volume dropped. simply advance. I have reassigned your emotional bandwidth away from damage control toward conquest. Every syllable they produce in private will ricochet harmlessly because the coordinates of your future are encrypted in glory, inaccessible to unauthorized pundits. If their statements ever breach the visible realm, they will serve as unintentional billboards pointing back to my faithfulness. The more they insist you can't, the louder your eventual achievement will thunder. God did. Savor that irony without gloating. Humility magnifies vindication, but remain vigilant. Silenced voices often try substitute tactics, subtle facial expressions, delayed replies, strategic silence. Recognize these gestures as residue, not renewed authority. Train your perception to focus on my infallible validation instead. Let committee chatter drift like background hum while you step onto stages previously barricaded by their predictions. Contracts they said would never materialize will land on your desk. Doors they claimed were padlocked will swing open before your unlaced shoes. And relationships they deemed out of your league will form organically beneath rays of favor they cannot shade. Take note. My silencing order extends to your own inner critic, the internalized version of their old scripts. When self-sabotaging thoughts repeat phrases they once hurled, too late, too foolish, too small, interrupt them with this decree: unauthorized transmission, access denied. Then pivot to purpose without hesitation. Your future now cues off my heartbeat, not their applause meter. And because prophetic silence toward you is matched by holy speech within you, expect acceleration. Blueprints will download at dawn. Problem-solving insight will strike mid-stride. Allies will recognize your vision before you finish outlining it. This is the reinvestment of mental real estate. Square footage once leased to critics now hosts innovation. Celebrate not by taunting detractors, but by stewarding this quieter atmosphere. Develop your craft, nurture your health, feed your joy, guard your schedule. The vacancy left by muted cynics is sacred space for destiny conversation. Use it wisely. Let each hour roar with productivity infused by grace. Remember, their permission was never required, but now their interference is formally barred. Proceed. Your horizon is clearing, and the only voice shaping it is mine, whispering, run. Nothing and no one holds the pen but me. The unburdening. Pause and notice the sudden lightness rising through muscles that have clenched for ages. This is not imagination. It is the tangible evidence of my hands slipping unseen shackles off your shoulders. Shackles that others smuggled onto you while smiling in your direction. They called those shackles responsibility, loyalty, just part of growing up. Disguising manipulation beneath flattering rhetoric. But I watched the entire plot, the backroom expectations, the whispered bargains that indebted you without consent, the emotional IOUs slipped into your pocket so gradually you believed they were your ideas. Each covert weight created micro-fractures in your spirit, forcing you to compensate with overwork, people-pleasing, ever-tightening schedules, and nighttime migraines no medicine could explain. Today, the covert load is being disassembled piece by piece because I have ruled that your momentum can no longer be compromised by obligations I never authored. Feel the first ounce of relief, a deep breath arriving without struggle, as I strip away assignments rooted in guilt rather than calling. Then sense the next layer fall. The silent pressure to rescue adults perfectly capable of walking, the compulsion to patch every argument, the reflex to apologize for space you're divinely entitled to occupy. Shed them like garments soaked in cement. My spirit now exposes every hidden hook embedded in compliments such as, "You're the only one who gets it done. We'd be lost without you, and no one else can handle this." Those statements once felt like validation. Now they sound like alarms, because truth has recalibrated your discernment. I am filling your inner court with new language. You are not the savior. Your worth predates your output. Rest is righteous. Let these phrases echo every time outdated obligations bang on the door. And know this: vacated space invites opportunity. As false duties exit, genuine assignments from my throne sweep in. They will feel lighter, even when demanding excellence, because burden and purpose weigh differently. Burden drags downward, purpose lifts as it stretches. Watch how creativity soars when you're no longer bracing beneath invisible cargo. Observe relationships blossom when you're no longer negotiating from fatigue. Some will protest the shift. Those accustomed to your perpetual yes will accuse you of changing, and they will be correct. Do not soften the transformation to soothe their discomfort. Compassion does not equal compliance. Let them recalibrate to your liberation or step aside while you proceed. Meanwhile, I'm engineering practical confirmation so you know this isn't mere emotion. Financial doors unlocking because funds once siphoned into duties are redirected to dreams. Medical tests returning improved because cortisol levels drop without chronic overextension. Unexpected allies arriving to carry tasks that were never yours. Marvel, but don't be paralyzed by wonder. Respond with stewardship. Implement boundaries like gates forged of tempered steel, not apologetic lace. Calendar your Sabbath before your meetings. Write permission to breathe across the center line of each to-do list. And when mental echoes try to resurrect phantom weights, you're selfish. What if everything falls apart? Counter with this decree: those weights have been revoked by royal decree, and any attempt to reinstall them is insubordination against heaven's order. Finally, anticipate a fresh sensation, joy that endures past sunrise, because your spirit is no longer performing deadlift reps for burdens it never owned. That enduring joy is evidence of my craftsmanship. Wear it openly, not as defiance but as testimony. And while you move lighter, quicker, truer, remember we are still advancing. Every unburdened step multiplies your reach. Let freedom fuel stamina. Let clarity sharpen vision. Let gratitude guide stewardship. The clandestine heaviness is history. Stride forward, unencumbered, entrusted, and astonishingly buoyant. The unspoken whispers. There were sentences you formed only in the silence of exhaustion. Thoughts so raw they never reached your lips. Yet every one of them found its way to my throne. I captured the moment your spirit whispered what your voice couldn't risk uttering. Those fears you hid behind small talk. Those desperate hopes folded into deep sighs when no one was watching. None of it missed my attention. You convinced yourself they were too fragile to speak aloud, too irrational to burden anyone with. But they weren't irrational to me. I am the one who sits with you in the language beneath language, who understands your pauses as fully as your prayers. And now I am responding, not with noise, but with movements so precise, so intimately targeted, that they will feel like echoes of what you once dreamed, but were too scared to believe. This is not about dramatic signs or grand displays. This is about tailored intervention, personal realignment, and answers shaped in the exact mold of the questions you thought would never be noticed. I saw when you smiled while internally unraveling. I stood beside you during those nights when you stared at the ceiling, rehearsing futures that felt out of reach. I took note when you accepted less, not because you lacked ambition, but because fear had convinced you that asking for more was selfish. But child, I'm not offended by the things you couldn't bring yourself to articulate. I'm the one who speaks fluently in sighs and tears, who translates your weariness into requests and your hesitations into holy petitions. The conversations you started in your mind but abandoned halfway because you thought I wouldn't respond, those are the ones I've been waiting to answer. Now look around you with open eyes. Opportunities that match your unspoken needs are forming. People you never expected to align with your journey will suddenly cross paths, carrying the encouragement or confirmation you couldn't even ask for. Solutions will rise from places you overlooked because they didn't fit into your logical expectations. Why? Because your logic wasn't faulty. It was just too limited to contain what I'm releasing. You'll start noticing that the situations you used to tiptoe around with caution will begin folding under my authority. The doors you were afraid to knock on are already unlocking. The healing you weren't bold enough to name is beginning to pulse beneath the surface. And the restoration you thought was impossible is circling closer, like rain clouds preparing to pour after a long drought. You don't need to justify the timing. You don't have to explain why you didn't say it sooner. There's no reprimand here, only a response. Because I've been listening the whole time, and in my kingdom, no whisper is wasted. The thoughts you wrestled with in solitude were never yours to resolve alone. I've been brooding over those unvoiced yearnings like an artist finishing a masterpiece in private, waiting for the exact moment to reveal the beauty you didn't even know was possible. And that moment is here. As I begin to move, resist the urge to analyze the how. Just follow. Don't over-edit your response, trying to make sense of the mystery. Trust the unfolding. Your role is not to predict it, but to prepare space for it. Clear the clutter of false expectations. Make room for the new, and remain open to joy that doesn't need to be earned. I'm not only answering what you didn't say, I'm going beyond it. I'm filling gaps you forgot existed, meeting needs you couldn't name, and covering corners of your life that remained untouched by your own understanding. Let this truth settle deep within you. My silence was not absence, it was a setup. And now that I've begun to speak through circumstances, connections, and clarity, nothing will remain vague. What was once a private ache is becoming a public breakthrough. What you didn't say is now what I'm shouting through every unfolding moment. I heard you, and this is the answer. Get ready. It's all lining up. The end of explaining. Stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never designed to hold your light. I've watched you dim your brilliance for rooms that refuse to turn on a switch. You've offered explanation after explanation, hoping your sincerity would translate to understanding, but it didn't. You tried to clarify your intentions, your decisions, even your existence, hoping that if you could just explain it right, they would finally see your heart. But they never did, and they never will. Not because you lacked value, but because their vision was never aligned to recognize what I've placed inside you. And that's no longer your problem to solve. This moment is your release notice from every conversation built on defending what I already confirmed. You've exhausted yourself trying to convince people who decided long ago not to understand you, but they don't get to vote on your calling. They don't get to approve what I've already endorsed. Your assignment doesn't require their applause. Your journey doesn't pause for their permission. And your identity cannot be defined by people who were never invited to read the pages I wrote about you before time began. Let me make this clear. You don't owe them a performance. Not one more explanation. Not one more carefully worded message. Not one more overcompensating gesture to make them feel comfortable with the weight of your destiny. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They misread your patience as passivity. They thought your grace was ignorance. But I saw you. I saw the nights you wanted to defend yourself and instead stayed silent out of honor. I saw you absorb their misjudgment without retaliation. I saw the way you kept showing up for people who barely acknowledged your effort. But enough. I'm not just stepping in to validate you. I'm declaring that your days of begging for respect are over. You've been carrying invisible exhaustion from constantly managing other people's insecurities. They couldn't handle the magnitude of your calling, so they tried to minimize it. They couldn't understand your joy, so they questioned your motives. They couldn't mirror your excellence, so they attempted to mute your presence. But what they failed to realize is that your worth was never up for discussion. It was sealed when I formed you in secret. their inability to receive you doesn't equal a verdict against you. It simply confirms that I'm calling you to graduate from their gaze. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your transformation. Some were only ever meant to watch from a distance. And from this point forward, that's exactly where they'll be. No more adjusting your personality to make yourself easier to digest. No more softening your passion to make others comfortable. No more hiding your wisdom so their pride won't feel threatened. You were never called to blend in with their expectations. You were created to stand out in divine distinction. And the time has come for you to own that without apology. I'm placing a new strength in your voice, a new steadiness in your walk, and a new boldness in your spirit. And it's going to offend people who benefited from your silence. Let them be offended. That's not your burden anymore. From now on, your life will speak so clearly that it won't require commentary. Your fruit will silence false witnesses. Your results will contradict their rumors, and your peace will confuse every accuser who tried to disqualify you. I am elevating you in such a way that the conversations they once weaponized will become irrelevant. You will no longer be present at tables where you are merely tolerated. I'm reserving seats for you in places where your voice is honored and your presence is welcomed. But first, release the need to be understood by those who chose blindness. They may never see you, but I always have and I always will. Keep moving forward. You have nothing left to prove. The truth about the past, every false statement, every twisted version of your truth, every rumor stitched together by envy and sent to trail behind you like a shadow, watch it now collapse under the weight of my justice. These weren't just careless words tossed into the air. They were arrows aimed at your identity, laced with poison meant to slow you down, distract your focus, weaken your voice, and bruise your spirit. But I never authorized those narratives. I never approved those definitions. And today, I'm dissolving their influence like fog before the fire of dawn. I'm silencing every echo that is repeated in your head more than it ever should have. Those phrases they hurled in ignorance. Too much, not enough, unworthy, unready, are being plucked from your memory. Not with violence, but with holy precision, like weeds pulled from the soil of your soul, so real growth can finally breathe. They lied, child, not always with loud voices or public declarations, but sometimes with subtle tones, passive glances, and loaded silences. They lied when they withheld affirmation you earned. They lied when they reduced your progress to luck, when they said your passion was pride, when they mocked the very gifts I planted in you. And because you're sensitive to people's hearts, you absorbed those untruths more deeply than you realized. You didn't agree with them, but part of you started adapting to them, changing how you showed up, dialing down your light, second-guessing your instincts. I watched as you shrank in rooms you were born to lead, and not because you lacked courage, but because the noise of distortion was too loud. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. But the distortion is being shut off. Heaven is issuing cease and desist orders against every deceptive voice that tried to claim authority over your image. You don't need to fight them back with your own words. I'm handling it. I'm not just removing their permission to speak. I'm removing their impact altogether. The energy you spent replaying what they said will now be redirected toward fulfilling what I've spoken. From this moment forward, your mind will begin to recognize lies for what they are, the instant they try to enter your heart. No more wondering, was that true about me? No more late-night wrestling with phrases that never carried my voice. I am recalibrating your discernment so precisely that falsehoods will no longer linger. An even better truth will stick to you like oil seeping into every crack the lies once tried to fill. Expect to feel a sudden peace where anxiety once stirred. Expect old accusations to lose their sting. Expect to look at yourself through a different lens, not prideful but clear. You'll stop asking, "What if they are right?" and start declaring, "God already said who I am." Because you don't have to defend yourself when truth is your covering. And I am covering you now, not just for protection but for visibility. The lies didn't just attempt to define you, they tried to hide you, but I'm uncovering what they tried to bury, unamplifying what they attempted to muffle. And every time they said they'll never make it, I'm answering with, "Watch what I'm about to do." Even better, I'm turning the damage into destiny. Every scar from a slanderous remark is being repurposed as a badge of endurance. Every place where you were misrepresented is now an entry point for my presence to be revealed through you. You won't just rise in spite of what was said. You will rise with testimony carved from it. You'll shine in a way that makes people wonder how the same person who was once talked down about became the one everyone looks up to. And your response won't be bitterness. It will be freedom. Because when I remove the lies, I also remove the need for revenge. This is what truth does. It doesn't just silence the lies, it heals the wounds they created. Let me do that for you now. I already started. Feel the reverberation as heavy hinges groan and locks snap shut. Not to trap you, but to secure you from corridors where humiliation masqueraded as opportunity. Those entryways once looked promising until the moment you arrived, only to be clanged shut with pointed precision meant to bruise your confidence. You can still recall the sting of rejected proposals, unanswered messages, and interview smiles that froze into dismissal the second you turned away. And each slam echoed inside your chest long after the hallway fell quiet, convincing you that perhaps you misread my leading. Perhaps your readiness was fantasy. Perhaps favor skipped your address. But hear me now, those doors were never gateways. They were decoys, painted with potential yet hollow behind the frame, designed to consume your patience in perpetual knocking instead of propelling you toward prepared rooms. I allowed the slam so you would lose your appetite for places fueled by ego and scarcity, so your spirit would discern the counterfeit before genuine destiny appeared. Now that your discernment is sharpened, I am sealing those entrances permanently. No more guessing whether to try one more time. No more returning to negotiate access with gatekeepers drunk on their own power. The hallway itself is dissolving behind you like a mirage receding at dawn. You may feel the urge to glance back, to test the door just once more, but resist. My closure is not cruelty, it is calibration. Every no you heard will soon translate into an unmistakable now somewhere else, in an environment where your gift isn't tolerated but treasured. Picture this. While false porticos clang shut, fresh archways swing open ahead, requiring no coaxing, just your presence. And in those new spaces, honor will greet you at the threshold. Resources will wait without negotiation. Influence will unfold without compromise. You will walk through effortlessly, not because it costs nothing, but because the price was already paid in the currency of closed doors you endured. So release any lurking bitterness. The echo of those slams is already fading as heavenly architects erect passages that align with your true stature. Remember, I am not merely relocating you. I am rewiring your internal GPS so you instinctively bypass setups engineered to belittle you. From this moment forward, if a path requires you to shrink, second guess, or beg, you'll sense friction so strong you cannot proceed. That friction is my kindness, steering you away from repetition. And while some will claim I'm limiting your options, pay them no mind. They see scarcity where I design specificity. Watch how swiftly momentum accelerates once you stop auditioning for rooms built on insecurity. Projects will finalize. Partners will appear. Contracts will materialize, each stamped by grace, not groveling. Let the locked echoes fade. Their silence is a sound of new beginnings. Keep moving, beloved. The doors behind you are shut, but the future before you stands gloriously ajar, waiting for your confident stride. The end of almost. This is the divine announcement you didn't know your heart had been waiting for. Almost is no longer a part of your vocabulary. No more nearing breakthroughs that vanish at the last second. No more walking to the edge of opportunity, only to see it collapse just before you reach it. No more relationships that start with promise and end with confusion. No more interviews that go well until the final round. No more doors that open a crack just wide enough to glimpse possibility before shutting again with no explanation. Those cycles of emotional and spiritual whiplash are being broken by my hand permanently. I've seen how the nearness of victory stings worse than complete absence. I watched you stay up night after night, not because nothing happened, but because too much almost happened. You almost got chosen. You almost got the call. You almost made it through. And each time, that almost echoed louder than failure, because it whispered what could have been but never became. But I'm telling you now, I am removing almost from your timeline. I am closing the door on unfinished answers and beginning a new season of undeniable completion. You don't realize it yet, but almost was never random. It was strategic resistance designed to drain your faith slowly, to exhaust your belief system, to make you question if you were worthy enough to receive. And the enemy used it well, with whispers like, maybe you're cursed. Maybe God changed his mind. Maybe you weren't meant to have that after all. But none of those suggestions carry my voice. I was never the one stringing you along. I was never the one teasing your heart. I was the one preserving you while the foundation of your promise was still forming. Sometimes I had to protect you from doors that looked complete on the outside, but were hollow within. Other times the reason had nothing to do with you. It was the timing, the preparation of others involved, the pieces not yet set in place. But now, all the arrangements are ready. The page has turned, and I'm not asking you to try harder, hope louder, or beg longer. I'm simply declaring that the days of almost are done. You will begin to see doors not only open, but stay open. What starts will finish. What begins with clarity will carry through with confirmation. What is offered will be sustained. That creative idea you once shelved because it almost worked will now succeed effortlessly, because this time it is backed by completion, not just inspiration. Those dreams you placed on pause because they nearly broke you now have air to breathe and strength to stand. And the people I send won't nearly love you or almost understand you. They will arrive already aligned, already willing, already able to walk with you the entire way. The environments I'm placing you in will not require you to prove your place. They will welcome you with room to expand. And listen closely. I am even healing the trauma caused by all the unfinished moments of your past. The psychological weight of disappointment, the subtle dread you feel before something good happens, that protective doubt you carry like armor so you don't get your hopes up. That heaviness is lifting. I am rewriting your emotional rhythm from hesitation to expectation. You'll no longer approach opportunities with guarded hope. Instead, you'll approach with bold assurance, knowing that if I open the door, I intend for you to walk fully through it. No more testing the floor to see if it will hold. No more flinching every time something feels too good. I want you to enjoy what I give without constantly waiting for it to vanish. So let me be clear. Your time of partial access, near misses, and incomplete joy has come to a close. I am sealing every almost that once left you confused, and in its place I'm releasing absolutely, completely, and certainly now. Not next time, not later, but now. You are stepping into fulfillment that doesn't require begging. You are walking into favor that won't slip through your fingers. You are receiving answers that don't need interpretation. They are crystal clear. The ache of almost is finished. Fulfillment begins. Surrender and supernatural flow. Drop your weapons, not because you're losing, but because I've already claimed the ground you've been trying to win through exhaustion. This is not a surrender to your circumstances. This is a surrender to my sovereignty. You've been battling battles I never assigned, defending what I already sealed, and striving to protect blessings that are under divine insurance. You thought you had to earn, maintain, and secure what I had already written under my name. But hear me now. I'm releasing you from every unnecessary fight that wore you down and convinced you that survival was your destiny. It's not. You were not born to spend your energy convincing people, proving your anointing, justifying your presence, or wrestling with outcomes I've already authored. That fight was never yours. The territory you've been trying to protect is already under my jurisdiction, and I do not lose what I claim. There's a difference between obedience and overcompensation. You were called to walk and not to wrestle. You were designed to partner with my spirit, not to become the sole guardian of your calling. Somewhere along the way, you took on the burden of managing what I only asked you to steward, and that pressure became your atmosphere. Tension in your jaw, fatigue in your bones, a soul clenched like a fist. But I am loosening that grip. What is mine does not require your panic. What I've established cannot be undone by human interference or demonic manipulation. I'm not asking you to convince the world you're worthy. I'm commanding you to stand in the truth that you already are. Let go of the impulse to shield what I've built. Step back from the compulsion to explain why you belong. The fight to be seen, understood, validated, and included. It ends now because I already saw you, I already chose you, and I already made room for you where none existed. Every attempt to protect what's mine using your own strength only leads to burnout. You are not meant to defend your future with fear. I don't operate through anxiety. I move through peace. That doesn't mean you won't have to make decisions, but it means those decisions won't be born from desperation. You won't have to chase just to keep what I've already handed to you. What's mine, I maintain. What I give, I sustain. Your name is written into a territory that no thief can erase. And if I planted you there, no voice, system, or circumstance can evict you. Let that become your rhythm, secure and unbothered. You don't have to explain your miracle to doubters. You don't need to give a tour of your process to skeptics. They will either witness my hand on your life or miss it entirely. But neither outcome changes the fact that your inheritance is intact. And when resistance arises, and yes, it still might, it won't be your cue to panic. It'll be your cue to rest deeper in me. Let opposition remind you that what you carry must be valuable. Let delay reveal the strength of your trust, not the shakiness of your identity. And let closed mouths and cold shoulders teach you to feast in the presence of your enemies without needing their permission to enjoy what I've set before you. Remember, David didn't build the table, he sat at it. I'm calling you to do the same. Sit down, be well, laugh fully, breathe deeply. Stop guarding what I've already secured. Your role is not to fight for the territory I've already conquered. Your role is to walk in it confidently, faithfully, joyfully. This next chapter will not be marked by striving. It will be defined by supernatural flow. Where you once fought for peace, peace will now be the starting point. Where you once struggled to maintain connections, the right relationships will remain with ease. Where you once begged for clarity, my direction will feel like second nature. All of this begins the moment you stop fighting battles that were never yours to carry. I've got you, and everything I call mine, including you, stands undefeated. From desperation to confidence. Hear me with unfiltered clarity. Desperation was never meant to be the soundtrack of your faith. Somewhere along your journey, you equated pleading with persistence, begging with devotion, thinking that if your voice cracked enough, If your knees bruised enough, if your prayers sounded frantic enough, you might finally prove your sincerity. But begging is the posture of someone who doubts the generosity of the one they're speaking to. And that is not who you are, and it is certainly not who I am. I am the Father who knows what you need before a single syllable leaves your mouth. I am the shepherd who lays provision before you in the presence of scarcity. I am the King who invites you to the throne of grace boldly, not shakily. So today, I'm severing the internal script that taught you had to grovel for what I freely give. Every situation that conditioned you to think survival depended on your willingness to beg, whether it was relationships where affection had to be bartered, workplaces where respect required constant overperformance, or family dynamics where love felt like a reward for perfect behavior. Those environments are losing their hold over you. I am exposing their influence and dismantling the mechanism that kept you looping in self-diminishment. Understand, I'm not rebuking your passion. I cherish your hunger, your pursuit, your earnest prayers. But the difference between hunger and desperation is identity. Hunger says, I know my Father will feed me. I'm eager for the meal. Desperation says, perhaps I can scavenge a crumb if I cry loud enough. One honors my nature, the other suspects abandonment. I never left you to scavenge. I positioned you for fullness. So I'm not just ending external systems that pressed you into begging. I'm rewiring your reflexes. From this moment, when lack whispers threats, your heart will not default to panic. It will default to assurance. Provision is not purchased with panic. It's received through confidence in my character. When you approach me, it will no longer sound like pleading for scraps. It will sound like thanking me in advance for what I've already willed to release. Watch how this adjustment ripples through every sphere of your life. In prayer, your tone will shift from frantic petitions to expectant agreement. In conversation, your vocabulary will shed self-deprecating qualifiers. You won't apologize for asking honest questions. In decisions, you'll feel a new steadiness. Choices will flow from clarity, not from fear of rejection. Even your physical body will notice the shift. Shoulders that carried tension from constant self-defense will ease back. Sleep that felt shallow because your mind rehearsed worst-case scenarios will deepen. Creativity once stifled by survival mode will ignite again because safety breeds innovation. But hear this warning. Liberated people sometimes wander back to familiar chains when challenges reappear. When the next moment of uncertainty knocks, your old instincts may resurface, whispering, "Quick, beg before favor disappears." Recognize that voice as an imposture and respond with truth. Grace is not a limited resource. My Father's storehouse doesn't operate on a scarcity budget. Counter the deception with a declaration. Say out loud, I do not beg, I receive. I do not grovel, I partner. I do not plead, I praise. Let that become your anthem until it saturates muscle memory. I'm also aligning circumstances to affirm this transformation. Opportunities will arise that do not require a bidding war for your worth. Doors will open without you pounding. Connections will pursue you instead of you chasing them. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations that the begging season is dead. Treat each confirmation like a memorial stone so you never forget this pivot. Journal them, testify about them, build internal altars of remembrance. Should insecurity attempt to come back, point to those stones and declare, my history proves begging is obsolete. Finally, understand this. By ending what made you beg, I am beginning what shapes you into a bold distributor of blessing. You will pour out with the same freedom you've received. Generosity flows easiest through hearts unafraid of lack, and your life will stand as living proof that children of the Most High never have to grovel. They simply gather the goodness their Father delights to give. Letting go of others' burdens, Breathe in this command like oxygen to a suffocating soul. Release what never belonged in your hand. You have lugged invisible freight across seasons, responsibilities secretly transferred to you through obligation, guilt, misplaced loyalty, and the sheer momentum of being the reliable one. Somewhere along the trek, you inherited worries that originated in other hearts, debts rooted in other choices, and secret anxieties projected onto you as if you were a storage unit for everyone else's unrest. Because your compassion is strong, you accepted it, believing love meant absorbing the weight until your spine of hope broke under the accumulation. But child, I never commissioned you to be the pack mule of every crisis within arm's reach. I assigned you to be a vessel of lightness, one who moves nimbly through purpose, not one who crawls beneath heaps of second-hand heaviness. Today, my voice slices through the straps you wrapped around your shoulders. Obligations that kept you awake past midnight, scenarios you rehearsed in your head 1,000 ways to save someone from the consequences of their repeated decisions, logistical nightmares you managed so others could coast, the unspoken expectation that your success must guarantee everyone else's comfort. Hear the snap of those cords falling. Feel the sudden vacuum of pressure leaving your chest. This is not abandonment of people. This is alignment with truth. Love does not equal enabling. Kindness cannot flourish under chronic overload. Stewardship fails when saturation steals clarity. I designed you to carry vision, not everyone's indecision. Notice how the ground beneath feels firmer now that you are upright instead of stooped. Stand tall and examine the cargo you're releasing. Regrets that belong to your parents, performance quotas set by culture, financial fears inherited from generational scarcity, reputational management for people addicted to approval, and emotional mediation for relationships that refused accountability. Watch them hit the earth with dull thuds, powerless without your agreement. Some may try to roll back toward you, appealing to your history of caretaking, whispering, "What will happen if you set me down?" Counter with conviction, "What will happen if I don't?" Because clinging to foreign burdens is spiritual theft, stealing energy assigned to your own calling. Those resources must now be redirected to projects heaven has actually drafted you to steward. Creativity awaiting your undivided focus. Rest that will unlock new strategies. Friendships requiring authenticity rather than constant rescue. And worship unhindered by exhaustion. Expect discomfort in the vacuum once filled by weight. Empty spaces can feel unfamiliar, but do not mistake lightness for loss. As muscles unwind, they may tremble, detoxing from years of tension. Let them. Restorative tremors are proof of healing. Drink water, sleep deeply, laugh without apology. These are practical acts of spiritual warfare against the lie that busyness equals importance. And prepare for backlash. Those who benefited from your overextension might label your boundaries as selfish. Bless them silently and move forward. Their frustration reveals dependency, not partnership. True partners will applaud your freedom, adjust their own loads, and walk beside you rather than on top of you. I am also retooling your internal filters so you recognize future burdens before they latch on. When a request arises, pause and ask, was this assigned by God or adopted by guilt? If guilt answers first, decline. If fear screams urgency, step back. If peace wraps the request like velvet, accept. This new discernment will streamline your path, freeing bandwidth for creative blueprints I've been waiting to download. Strategies that require a clear headspace. Ideas that need margin to germinate. Revelations that only land in hearts uncluttered by false duty. Watch resources multiply as weight diminishes. Finances, once hemorrhaged into placating others, will funnel into seed for dreams. Time, once devoured by damage control, will reappear as morning quiet where you and I converse. And hurried emotional capacity, once drained by perpetual crisis, will blossom into empathy, sharpened by wisdom, not fatigue. You will discover that carrying what is truly yours actually energizes you, because purpose carries its own fuel, and with every step, gratitude will swell. Not the guarded gratitude of someone scared blessings might break, but the jubilant gratitude of someone dancing under a sky cleared of cumbersome clouds. So drop it now. Let gravity claim what grace never assigned. Shake loose the final crumbs of obligation from your hands. Clap them clean. Lift those hands and surrender, and feel current surge through fingers made for building, not hauling. Your posture is changing from burden to bold, from hunch to herald, from overwhelmed to overflowing. Walk on, lighter than you felt in years, and notice how momentum quickens when unnecessary cargo stays behind. The shredded blueprints. Listen with an undistracted spirit. The blueprints that hell, haste, or human pressure drafted over your life are being shredded in the courts of heaven this moment. Schemes authored by anxiety, scrapped. Paths paved by comparison, gone. Dead-end strategies birthed in fear of missing out, erased. I am sending a resounding void stamp across timelines that pushed you to outrun grace, across commitments that looked impressive but siphoned purpose, and across alliances that glittered yet secretly siphoned virtue. You felt the tension, calendar packed, mind cluttered, soul restless, because those agendas never synchronized with the cadence of my heartbeat. They promised significance but delivered fragmentation. They paraded as opportunity, yet silently auctioned off your peace. Enough. My sovereign decree, every counterfeit itinerary is revoked. Feel the tremor as unseen chains snap. Obligations engineered by ego lose their grip. Invitations rooted in manipulation evaporate like mist under a noon sun. Do not mourn the collapse of these arrangements. Celebrate the liberation of your bandwidth. Now, return to your true calling. As this divine editing sweeps through your schedule, space will appear where no space existed. That vacuum is wholly reserved for original assignments awaiting oxygen. Expect sudden cancellations that look disappointing at first glance. A meeting postponed, a partnership dissolved, a project shelved. Resist the reflex to resuscitate what I have declared finished. Trust that subtraction is protection. I am not merely subtracting, I am resetting trajectories. Watch how redirected time becomes incubation for ideas that have lingered on the margins, neglected yet still pulsing with life. Watch how resources formerly funneled into vanity projects redirect toward endeavors carrying eternal weight. And observe the shift in your body. Headaches fading, breath deepening, shoulders descending from years of tension, because you no longer sprint after mirages. Some will misinterpret your newfound stillness as indecision. Let them. Kingdom clarity often appears as an earthly pause. Stand firm while the dust of dismantled plans settles. Soon, that horizon will reveal routes etched by my wisdom, lanes where favor flows without friction, relationships that reinforce rather than drain. When new instructions arrive, they will resonate like tuning forks inside your chest. No guessing, no grinding gears, only smooth alignment. Mark this day. It is the turning point where your story sheds detours, devised by desperation, and locks into the coordinates of destiny engraved in my book long before breath touched your lung. Walk freely. The cluttered roadmap has been replaced by a straight path lit with a peace that needs no explanation. No more explanations. This is where the cycle of explaining ends. You have poured out paragraph after paragraph trying to clarify who you were, what you did, why you stayed, how you felt, and when it changed, only to realize that no amount of reasoning can convert those who have already chosen not to understand you. You've written emotional essays in your head, composed apologies for seasons that were never meant to be public property, and offered insight into moments you barely survived yourself. But I'm stepping in today with finality in my voice. No more explanations. The past does not require your defense, because I've already ruled over it with mercy. What you walked through was real, but what you owe is nothing. You are not responsible for proving your transformation to anyone still committed to your former version. And you are not obligated to explain your healing to those who benefited from your brokenness. I saw how they froze your story in an outdated chapter, repeating it, reinterpreting it, retelling it without permission. They treated your struggle like a souvenir, something they could showcase or criticize when convenient. And in your effort to reclaim your name, you tried to explain, to educate, to defend. But child, their misjudgment does not alter my verdict. I did not ask you to prove growth. I asked you to walk in it. Let them believe what they want while you live free. Your silence is no longer a wound. It is a boundary. You're not hiding, you're healing. You're not retreating, you're rooting. And your time is better spent watering the future than weeding through old dialogues that only served confusion. You must understand this. Your past doesn't hold the authority to question your present. Who you were is not on trial. That case has been closed, evidence buried in the sea of my forgiveness, and no human court can reopen it. Every time you revisit it to satisfy someone's curiosity or calm their assumptions, you slow your own momentum. And what's worse, you give unnecessary oxygen to something I already declared finished. Stop offering testimonies to people who see your history as entertainment. Not everyone asking deserves an answer. Some are watching not to understand, but to dissect. Some are listening not to support, but to gather ammunition. And some are smiling not to celebrate, but to keep you doubting your next step. Discern who gets access, and don't be afraid to say nothing. You are not arrogant for withholding your backstory. You are not bitter for declining invitations to relive trauma. You are not cold for choosing peace over performance. You are wise. You are chosen. You are moving. And as you move, I will silence rumors without your help. I will make fruit grow so abundantly in your current life that even skeptics will have to acknowledge my hand upon you. I will vindicate you through visible favor. I will restore what was mocked. I will elevate what was misunderstood, and I will open doors that render past conversations irrelevant. Even more, I'm reintroducing you to yourself, stripped of guilt, free from rehearsals, untethered from narrative management. You don't have to keep spinning plates of explanation. Let them fall. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. Let confusion crumble. Let the misunderstanding remain unanswered. And in that space of surrender, watch me build something unshakable. A life that doesn't need explanation, only expression. A presence so rooted in me that it no longer seeks validation from the very places that once dismissed it. A spirit so focused on next steps that it no longer glances backward to decode what's already buried in grace. So here's your permission slip, signed in blood and sealed by resurrection. Walk forward without looking back to narrate every mile. Let this be the day you release yourself from the burden of clarity for others. I am your clarity. I am your witness. I am your record keeper. And I say, no more explanations. You're free. Move accordingly. Beyond detours to destiny. Lean in. This is an emergency extraction from a deception that said you've been circling the same coordinates for too long. The obstacles you labeled as permanent were never woven into the storyline I authored for you. They were temporary scaffolds meant to teach, not cages designed to trap. That relationship that seemed to anchor you in place, that job that drained your creativity while promising stability, that habit you justified as necessary relief, each one masqueraded as destiny, but they were detours masquerading as destination. Your true tomorrow has been waiting beyond those false finish lines, unmoved by every delay that tried to convince you time had expired. Hear the urgency in my declaration. Detours do not dictate destiny. The future I breathe into existence does not bargain with barricades. It transcends them. You assumed the closed loop was proof of my silence, but it was a loud invitation to re-examine alignment. Stagnation isn't always a lack of motion. Sometimes it's motion without meaning. Effort invested in systems that reward endurance, but not advancement. Remember how you hustled to meet expectations that never satisfied. How you rehearsed conversations hoping approval would unlock the next level. The treadmill performed one cruel trick, exhausting you while lying about progress. But your future, my design, was never located on that belt. I placed it beyond man-made metrics, beyond applause, beyond fear-based checklists, waiting for the moment you tire of maintenance without momentum. That moment is now. I'm severing the cables tethering you to cycles that look useful but drain life. Contracts, mindsets, even social circles that celebrated your consistency while secretly fearing your evolution. They are losing their grip. I'm turning the spotlight toward the open horizon. You stop noticing the unexplored territories humming with assignments customized for your voice, your insight, your touch. Some will marvel, others will question. A few will resist. Don't pause to debate. Every second spent justifying movement to spectators is fuel stolen from the journey itself. Instead, let your acceleration be the answer. You'll know you're on the right trajectory because peace will pace you. Steady, unforced, powerful, like a current guiding a ship through wide water. Provision will align without the contortions previously required. And creativity will surge, signaling that you stepped into the ecosystem where your gifts breathe easiest. Expect internal confirmation. Ideas arriving fully formed at dawn, courage rising unannounced in situations that once triggered hesitation, sudden clarity when opportunities present themselves. Expect external evidence as well. Unexpected allies surfacing with resources, dormant dreams reawakening with fresh relevance. Administrative details smoothing out as if invisible hands were arranging them. All of this is proof that the environment which once defined possible was too small. Do not mourn its collapse. Celebrate the revelation that its ceiling was never intended to cap you. I am calling you to trust forward motion even when the map looks incomplete. Because propulsion powered by my promise will reveal pathways impossible to predict from a standstill. Release nostalgia for routines that validated effort without translating it into impact. Release loyalty to structures that required your sweat yet stunted your spirit. Thank them for the lessons and walk on. The future has not been delayed. It has been preserved, safeguarded from dilution. While you collected tools, only waiting makes visible resilience, discernment, persistent hope. Now, deploy them. Step where uncertainty dares you to falter, knowing I underwrite each stride. The trap that once felt like fate was a mirage. The horizon now stretching before you is the reality I've prepared all along. Move swiftly. Momentum favors obedience, and let every forward step declare to the past, you never owned me. The snipped cord, this is the moment I step in and sever what has siphoned your energy, clarity, joy, and inner fire without ever giving anything back. Not gradually, not delicately, but decisively, like a surgeon's final cut that ends the damage and starts the healing. You've poured into spaces that only absorbed your strength. You've tended to needs that grew hungrier the more you gave. You've invested in dynamics that survived by keeping you uncertain, tethered to emotional confusion, and stuck in cycles of caretaking where the reward was always 1 inch out of reach. But I never created you to be the fuel for someone else's dysfunction. And I never assigned you to relationships, responsibilities, or routines that run on your exhaustion. That source of depletion, whether it came disguised as friendship, duty, or even self-expectation, is now being disconnected. You've stayed connected longer than you should have, not out of ignorance, but out of compassion. You thought love meant holding on even when the connection began to bleed you dry. You made excuses for behavior that bruised your soul, hoping your consistency would transform their inconsistency. You convinced yourself that endurance was faithfulness, even as your strength dwindled and your spirit began whispering for help. And yet you stayed. You stayed because you were loyal, because you're hopeful, because you're wired to heal. But child, no more. I'm not asking you to cut the cord. I'm doing it for you. I'm stepping between you and that source of silent breakdown and placing divine scissors in motion. This cord isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. It links to memories that won't release their grip, obligations no longer ordained, and mental loops that echo false responsibility. And with one heavenly movement, I am snipping the connection. And once the cord is gone, you'll feel it instantly. Like fresh air after a storm, like water after a drought. Your energy will begin to return in unexpected ways. Sleep will come easier, tears will dry quicker, laughter will feel more natural, not something you have to force. And your mind, long overrun with overthinking and what-ifs, will suddenly stretch out, no longer crowded by their needs, their crises, their chaos. This isn't abandonment. This is rescue. This is a divine intervention from the slow decay that tried to disguise itself as loyalty. Understand this: what drained you had no intention of stopping. It would have continued until you no longer recognized yourself. That's why I stepped in. My love for you demanded it. I refuse to watch you leak life into soil that cannot grow anything for you. And you'll notice too, after this cut, the people or situations that once pulled you like gravity will feel distant, disconnected, muted. That's not numbness, it's freedom. You don't owe responses where access has been revoked. You don't owe updates to environments I've called you out of. And you certainly don't owe explanations to the things I've cut away for your protection. Let silence say what you no longer need to articulate. Let absence speak louder than explanation ever could. But this isn't just about relief, it's about restoration. With the draining source removed, you'll begin to recharge. With it, your spirit will stabilize, your vision will sharpen, your boundaries will strengthen, not out of fear, but wisdom. You'll remember how it feels to operate from overflow rather than survival. You'll be able to give again, but from wholeness, not from wounds. You'll begin to recognize the difference between connections that require sacrifice and those that multiply your capacity. And I will teach you to guard that discernment fiercely. So don't reach for what I've removed. Don't scroll their pages. Don't reread the messages. Don't replay the final words. The cord is gone. The attachment is dead. You are not being cruel. You are being reclaimed. And everything ahead of you now is structured to heal what was broken, like to rewire what was strained, to replenish what was stolen. You've lived plugged into depletion long enough. Now plug into me, your true source. You won't run out again. You won't pour until you disappear. I've cut the cord. You're free now. Rise. The harvest of tears. Lean closer, child. Feel the ground beneath you tremble with expectancy, because every drop that slid down your cheeks during lonely midnights was never wasted water. It was liquid promise soaking barren soil. You mistook weeping for weakness, agony for accusation, and grief for divine displeasure. Yet I collected every tear in chambers of remembrance, labeling each vial with purpose. Those salty streams carried fragments of hope you could not voice, petitions too fragile for daylight, and seeds of prayer squeezed through clenched throats. All of them were embedded in earth that looked incapable of sustaining life. I hid them there, beneath ridicule, beneath misunderstanding, beneath seasons where sunlight seemed stingy, because seeds germinate in darkness. While you worried that your sorrow signified failure, I was engineering hidden roots, extending tenacious tendrils down to underground rivers of grace no drought could evaporate. You pleaded for the tears to stop, unaware that the harvest timetable demanded saturation. And those storms stomped across your landscape, threatening to erode everything. Each rumble only pressed the seeds deeper, anchoring them against being uprooted. I watched you wipe your face with trembling palms, whispering apologies for emotions you couldn't control. But heaven wrote those moments into a prophecy. A day is coming when fields will sing where tears once fell. That day has arrived. Listen, there's a rustle in the spirit, the unmistakable chatter of sprouts breaking through crusted memories. First blades of renewal pierce the surface, telling drought-crafted lies to retreat. You're about to see color where only gray existed. Blooms of joy will appear abruptly, almost scandalously, in places critics labeled hopeless. Crops of peace will wave in winds once reserved for despair. The fragrance of fresh purpose will float over valleys where you thought dreams went to die, and you won't toil to force fruition. Harvest is heaven's response to tears already sown. Your role is to gather, celebrate, and distribute. Gather testimonies into baskets of gratitude. Celebrate by dancing on ground formerly soaked with sorrow. Distribute abundance to travelers still journeying through their own midnight gardens, showing them tear-scarred hands now lifting bouquets of evidence. Understand, harvest changes economics. Scarcity once governed your decisions, calculating risks, rationing optimism. But abundance rewrites budgets. Where you once hesitated, you will now invest. Where you once bargained, you will now bless. Giving will feel natural, not as a duty but as overflow. I'll trust you with increase because I watched you steward emptiness with integrity, praising without a platform, serving without a spotlight, and believing while answers lingered in fog. That history qualifies you to handle plenty without arrogance. And note this. Harvest is not singular, it triggers cycles. Seeds produce fruit containing new seeds. Every healed memory will birth empathy. Every restored dream will breed innovation. Every breakthrough will sponsor another's liberation. You are stepping into perpetual multiplication, orchestrated by the same hands that counted your tears. But guard the fields. Critics who mocked your barren ground may return pretending expertise in cultivation. Some will want a share of produce they never watered, offering opinions disguised as partnership. Exercise discernment. Generosity doesn't equal gullibility. Share freely, yet steward wisely, directing first fruits back to me as an acknowledgement that growth originated in grace, not human mastery. Keep the soil healthy through continual gratitude. Ingratitude hardens earth faster than drought. And when new challenges arise, as they will in any living ecosystem, remember the principle. Tears are not punishments. If fresh sorrow drips, whether from new battles or deeper intercession, recognize them immediately as new seed. Assign them purpose. Release them with trust rather than shame. Feel the air shifting. Harvest carries a sound, a percussion of ripe fruit thudding softly into waiting hands. Angels join the rhythm, arranging opportunities like wagons to transport surplus joy into neighboring territories. I will highlight which doors to knock on with baskets of testimony, which hearts need the taste of your redemption, which wastelands crave the scent of hope. Move quickly. Ripe fruit given promptly prevents spoilage. Yet do not rush beyond wonder. Pause regularly to inhale the sweetness rising from once barren furrows. Let amazement renew your strength. Finally, lift your gaze to me, the Lord of the harvest. See pride absent from my eyes, only delight. I never found satisfaction in your tears themselves. My pleasure blooms in the flourishing they've produced. I promised beauty for ashes, and I keep promises. Walk the rows of abundance with your head high, shoulders relaxed, and a smile unfettered. Field after field answers the question that haunted your darkest hours. Was all that pain for nothing? Look around. The answer ripens everywhere, whispering back through rustling leaves. Nothing was wasted. Everything was planted. Now gather, rejoice, and feed the world. An unstoppable intervention. This time, I'm not knocking gently, hoping you'll let me in out of politeness or spiritual obligation. I'm not waiting for you to give me a scheduled moment between your fatigue and your fears. I'm not requesting reconsideration or pleading for permission. I'm stepping in with authority, not to offer advice, not to merely comfort your sorrow, but to remove you from the very system that kept swallowing your strength. This is not another season of subtle nudges. This is a full-scale intervention, heaven's response to the affliction that you thought you had to manage forever. You've tried coping, you've attempted strategies, you've attended to symptoms, but I'm not entering to negotiate your freedom. I'm arriving as the one who declares enough. I've come to deliver, not discuss, not improve what was breaking, not adjust what was unjust, not patch what was collapsing. I've come to deliver fully, suddenly, irreversibly. What you've been battling wasn't just circumstance, it was a structure, a spiritual ecosystem built to keep you barely breathing, barely believing, barely standing. You prayed for strength to endure it, but I've come to destroy it. You asked for help to make it through, but I've come to carry you out. Not gently, not gradually. Now, the chains might be invisible, but I see them. The patterns might look familiar, even comfortable, but I see the poison beneath the routine. And what I see, I act upon. I am not indifferent to the systems that slowly drained your faith while rewarding your silence. I'm not passive about your exhaustion. I've watched long enough. The hour has come. You will not rescue yourself. You were never meant to. That's why it's been so heavy, because you were trying to heal wounds while still sleeping on the battlefield. But I never asked you to be your own savior. I never required that you prove your worthiness before I move. In fact, I've always chosen to move first. Even when you hesitated, even when you questioned me, even when you blamed yourself for the chains you never asked for, I knew what was binding you, and I'm breaking it. Not by your might, not by your discipline, not by your charisma, but by my spirit alone. You will walk out of this, and it will not be by force. It will be by rescue. Expect a holy interruption. Systems you thought were unchangeable will begin to collapse. Conversations you rehearsed to protect yourself will become unnecessary. The need to prove your innocence or defend your decisions will dissolve, because deliverance doesn't require negotiation. It speaks for itself. Watch how things begin to move without your hands on them. Watch how exits open where there were only walls. Watch how people you once feared to confront begin fading into irrelevance. I will remove not only the chains, but the voices that convinced you to wear them proudly. I will untangle the layers gently, but thoroughly. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. And where there was once confusion, there will be absolute clarity, so strong that it silences questions before they are even asked. But let me be clear, this deliverance isn't just about escape. It's about placement. I'm not just removing you from harm, I'm positioning you in purpose. I'm lifting you out of confinement and setting you in wide spaces where you can breathe again, dream again, run again without checking over your shoulder. The trauma that once dictated your pace will no longer direct your decisions. You won't be shaped by fear of returning to bondage. You will be shaped by joy rooted in freedom. This shift will not be subtle. You'll sense it in your energy, your focus, your creativity. You'll hear it in your tone when you speak. Stronger, steadier, softer in the best way. You'll feel it in your rest, deep, unbroken, healing rest. And most of all, you'll feel me nearer than ever, not as a distant guide, but as your deliverer, walking beside you through every step of your escape. So don't ask if you deserve this. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't delay the moment by trying to understand every detail. Just yield. Lift your hands. Let go of what's not yours to fix. And let me be who I've always wanted to be for you. Not just your helper, but your rescuer. I don't need another chance. I've already begun. Now watch me finish it. The walls are down. Feel the vibrations rolling through the foundations that once penned you in. Each tremor is evidence that structures raised to restrict your reach cannot withstand a single word from my mouth. Those barriers weren't simply brick and circumstance. They were carefully engineered fortresses of skepticism, prejudice, and systemic delay. Influential voices cemented them with critique. Petty authorities reinforced them with policy. And even your own fleeting doubts mortared gaps between the stones. You walked parallel to those barricades for years, fingers brushing rough surfaces, wondering if perseverance alone might one day wear them down. Yet for every prayer you whispered and every plan you sketched, another layer seemed to appear overnight, higher and thicker than before, until the horizon disappeared behind a gray impenetrability. But listen now, the mortar is fracturing, the stones are rattling, not because you pushed harder, but because I issued a decree in realms unseen: collapse immediately. Invisible shockwaves began traveling through every obstacle aligned against your advancement. Schemes that thrive in secrecy are now exposed under noonday brightness. Partnerships forged specifically to block you are unraveling from the inside. Their agreements are suddenly incoherent. Their confidence is leaking through hairline cracks of uncertainty. You may hear the distant sound of critics scrambling, drafting fresh narratives to explain why their bulwarks are weakening, yet explanation is futile. My command reverberates deeper than their strategies. Where they stacked bureaucracy to slow your momentum, papers are misfiled, signatures delayed, and regulations overruled by higher rulings. Where relational sabotage wove gossip into nets, conversations fracture mid-sentence, loyalty shifts, and truth walks into rooms uninvited. Where inner hesitation lingered, clarity now floods like water through fissures, washing away sediment of second-guessing previously lodged in your thinking and under your feet. Feel it. Ground once stagnated by intimidation loosens, softening into fertile terrain ready to accept fresh footprints. Do not waste energy collecting rubble for inspection. Let the debris lie. Walls crumble to liberate, not to be analyzed. Instead, focus forward. There's fresh air beyond the breach, landscapes of possibility previously hidden by those oppressive ramparts. Step carefully but boldly. The territory ahead hasn't been trampled by familiarity, which means your creativity will pioneer pathways others never imagined. Yet remember, liberation always draws onlookers. Some will marvel at the sudden ruin of strongholds they thought eternal. Others will mourn the collapse of systems that preserved their power. Offer them neither apology nor arrogance, only the witness of steady progress. Your movement will testify louder than explanations. Understand, too, that fallen stones can become stepping stones. I will repurpose fragments that once confined you into foundations for new initiatives, educational programs, enterprises, and narratives that empower those still caged elsewhere. Pick up what is useful, leave what is dust, and let me show you how to architect gateways from former barricades. The transformation, the very masonry of oppression becoming platforms of influence, will confound cynics and encourage dreamers. Beware, though, a subtle temptation. Nostalgia for captivity disguised as nostalgia for security. After extended confinement, openness can feel too vast. Resist any urge to rebuild miniature versions of old walls for comfort. Freedom may feel vast, but vastness is the stage where destiny performs. When fear whispers, "This is too wide, too risky," answer, "My builder ensures my boundaries. Let my spirit teach you new rhythms of navigation." Trust replaces hustle. Worship replaces worry. Strategic rest replaces relentless striving. Finally, lift your eyes to me. the voice that leveled centuries-old stones with a syllable. I take no pleasure in destruction for destruction's sake. My delight is in the unstoppable blossoming of your purpose once barriers bow. Listen for my continued directions amid the settling dust. Where to plant first? Whom to invite? How to pace your expansion so joy outruns fatigue. Each step you take across the rubble echoes a larger proclamation. No obstacle, however entrenched, survives when my authority speaks. Walk on, child. The walls are down, and the vista ahead is waiting for your footprints. Redefining the journey. This is not about resetting to where you were before. Before the heartbreak, before the loss, before the confusion scattered your direction. This is beyond a fresh page, beyond a second chance. I'm not rewinding time to restore what you had. I'm unveiling a realm you've never stepped into before. A dimension where you're not just surviving differently, but existing entirely under new laws. Where gravity bends to grace, where time accelerates with purpose, where spiritual weight multiplies influence without wearing you down. You've outgrown the concept of starting over. That mindset was for old seasons where you tried to fix what fell apart. But this is transformation without reference to the old you. I'm not reconstructing the ruins. I'm pulling you into a territory untouched by past pain. You don't need to reclaim what was taken. You don't need to find your way back to the person you were before everything unraveled. That version served its season. It helped you grow roots, but it could never fly. The version I'm releasing now, reborn in the fires of disappointment, refined through every delay, and realigned by constant surrender, is not coming to relive history. You're not being placed back in the same lane with a clean slate. You're being moved into an elevated position that renders previous limitations irrelevant. Where you once had to knock, now doors open before you arrive. Where you once asked for help, now favor responds to your presence. Where you once felt invisible, now I'm placing you in spaces where your voice carries weight and your insight shifts outcomes. This dimension doesn't operate on hustle, striving, or people-pleasing. It runs on revelation, alignment, and rest. Not passive waiting, but active trust. Not burnout disguised as diligence, but effortless authority that flows because your identity is rooted in me, not your output. You'll notice conversations feel different. Opportunities won't drain, they'll energize. People who once overwhelmed you will now feel small in comparison to the mission burning in your bones. You'll stop praying for tables and start building them, not to prove anything, but because builders don't beg for seats. They create environments. And you, my child, are entering the dimension of kingdom creation. This is where the atmosphere responds to your words, where timing obeys your obedience, and where connections are divinely orchestrated, not worked through flesh. Understand this. The patterns that kept you stuck won't follow you here. They can't. Patterns only persist in old dimensions. That cycle of almost but not quite. That loop of giving more than you receive, broken. That tormenting inner voice that questioned your value, silenced. Those things expired with the old season. They cannot breathe in this elevation, and neither can false attachments. I know you feel it. Relationships that once made sense now feel foreign. Commitments that once seemed crucial are now weightless. That's not confusion, it's clarity awakening. In this dimension, peace becomes your compass, and the absence of it is a boundary. You won't need to pray for signs every hour. Discernment will ring like a bell inside your chest. And yes, it may feel uncomfortable at first. Elevation always disrupts equilibrium. Your old self will try to interpret the new through outdated lenses. But trust me, what doesn't make sense yet will soon become natural. You were made for this. The depth of your wilderness qualified you for an altitude others can't comprehend. The silence I allowed prepared you to hear me without distraction. The obscurity you hated protected you from sabotage too early. But now the veil is lifting. This is your moment of unveiling, not just to the world, but to yourself. You're going to see parts of you emerge that have been buried under survival. Strength that feels effortless, boldness that's calm, creativity that flows without panic, and love that overflows without depletion. So don't waste a second trying to explain this elevation to people anchored to the previous dimension. Let your fruit speak. Let your life whisper. This is what happens when God doesn't reset, He rewrites. You're not going back. You're not repeating cycles. You're not begging for restoration of what once was. You're stepping into what has never been. This is not a restart. This is a redefinition. Welcome to the new dimension. Let's begin. The language of silence. You remember those long stretches where the heavens felt sealed, where prayers echoed like footsteps in an empty hallway, and every sunrise seemed to arrive without fresh instructions, like mailboxes stuffed with nothing but air. You paced, you questioned, you replayed memories of times when my voice had thundered unmistakably through your spirit, then compared them to the hush that now wrapped your days and assumed the quietness meant banishment. But what you called absence was actually incubation. Picture the way a master potter leaves clay under a damp cloth, untouched while it settles into perfect pliability. Interruption would crack it, rush would ruin it, noise would mar its surface. My silence worked similarly, releasing you from endless chatter so hidden muscles of discernment could strengthen beneath the hush. In that hush, I was forming subtle reflexes, teaching your heart to sense direction without dramatic signs, training your intuition to recognize my nudge in the flicker of a verse or the pattern of an unexpected breeze. Silence is never lack. It is a different language, one that shapes listeners rather than merely informing them. Consider the seed pressed into earth. Does it feel forgotten while darkness envelops it? Does it assume the gardener turned indifferent because no sunlight reaches the buried shell? Of course not. The buried time is the exact context required for roots to anchor, for internal maps to download information about seasons, minerals, and gravitational pull. That hidden seed is absorbing more instruction in darkness than it ever could under constant daylight. Likewise, in your quiet valley, I embedded blueprints for future storms, coordinates for divine connections, and antidotes for temptations you haven't yet faced. I detoxed your appetite from applause so your motives could shed the craving for external confirmation. I rewired your nervous system to thrive on peace instead of adrenaline, because adrenaline burns quick, and peace endures journeys that stretch across decades. And I did all of it without breaking the stillness, because words would have distracted you from the surgery of stillness itself. You worried you'd lost momentum, yet roots deepen best when branches are still. You feared destiny stalled, yet I was calibrating launch sequences that require silence so small misalignments become audible. Think of an engineer listening to the hum of an engine in an otherwise quiet room. Only in stillness can she isolate subtle glitches. My hush provided that room around your soul, enabling minute adjustments that will prevent catastrophic failure at altitude. You felt me quiet the crowd of convenient companions. Their departure wasn't punishment. It removed static that would distort your frequency once true assignments arrived. You felt creativity flatten into a dull line, unaware I was resetting the baseline so future inspiration would register clearly on instruments I tucked into your spirit. You sensed me shielding you from stages you once daydreamed of occupying. I knew a raw spotlight melts ambition, not yet tempered by shadow. So I let the curtains remain closed until humility set bones like steel beneath your gift. Now, as dialogue resumes, notice the resonance, how a single whisper carries farther than previous shouts. Reverberations now travel through corridors cleared of clutter, making guidance immediate, unmistakable. You'll find yourself recognizing opportunities before emails arrive, composing solutions before problems surface, and speaking answers that ring with authority even to your own ears. That confidence isn't arrogance. It's the harvest of quiet mastery forged in seasons when none applauded. And you will guard silence as fiercely as you once feared it, carving intentional pockets of hush inside busy days because you have learned its weight. Silence isn't a void, it's a vault. Within its walls are stored the future's most delicate blueprints. So no, child, you were never dismissed. You were drafted into advanced training where stillness became the syllabus, where waiting became a weapon, and where unanswered questions became wombs for astonishing revelation. Let relief wash you clean of old accusations that labeled the hush a heavenly cold shoulder. Celebrate the artistry of a teacher who values depth over immediacy, integrity over impression, and endurance over exhibition. And carry this truth forward. Whenever quietness reappears, you will greet it not with panic, but with practiced curiosity. What refinement does my Father have scheduled next for me? Now understand the pattern. Silence announces preparation. Preparation precedes unveiling. Unveiling advances purpose, and purpose glorifies the one who loved you enough to be silent until the perfect word could propel you into realms noise could never reach. The veil is lifting. Let me lift the veil now, because it's time you see clearly what I was shielding you from when it looked like everything was falling apart. That opportunity that slipped away just as your hopes wrapped around it. That relationship that ended abruptly while your heart was still unfolding. The door you prayed would open, but remained sealed despite all your effort and faith. They didn't walk away. I pulled you back. I placed my hand between you and what would have drained the life out of you. Slowly, silently, and so deceptively that by the time you noticed, it would have felt too late to break free. What you called betrayal, I call redirection. What you labeled rejection, I marked as escape. I didn't steal something good from you. I intercepted a counterfeit before it could cement itself to your soul and suffocate your future. You saw what you thought you needed, but I saw what you couldn't afford to carry into the next level of your calling. I saw behind the smiles and opportunities. I heard conversations you weren't invited into. I recognized motives hidden behind charming facades. I read blueprints beneath surfaces that were painted to deceive. And while you cried out for me to restore what you thought was stolen, I wept with you, knowing one day you'd understand I was the one who broke the connection to save your destiny. It didn't slip through your fingers. It was removed from your grip for your survival. If you only knew what I blocked, what I rerouted, what I dismantled while you slept, your gratitude would drown your grief in seconds. You were never being punished. That ache in your chest wasn't punishment. It was pruning. I removed the branches that bore no fruit so that you could finally blossom. I stripped away attachments that loved the spotlight but abandoned you in the shadows. I took away what was draining your strength in the name of helping, but had no intention of walking with you into full freedom. And yes, I did it suddenly. Yes, I let it sting, because sometimes the only way to make sure you never run back is to let it close hard enough that you remember the sound of finality. But hear me, I was never absent in your loss. I was never passive. I was active, strategically, intentionally, relentlessly protecting your assignment, even when you begged me not to. Live now. Feel the silence that once haunted you growing quiet in a different way this time. Not with confusion, but with clarity. The air around you is lighter. The thoughts that once spiraled now land gently. The places where you used to compromise your peace just to maintain a connection no longer tempt you. That's not because you grew cold. It's because I healed enough of you to make room for discernment. You no longer crave what broke you. And the loss which once loomed like a gaping void has now become a sacred space where I can finally plant what will last. And what I'm planting now doesn't come with conditions or hidden traps. What I'm bringing into your life in this next phase will not require you to perform to be chosen, to shrink to be accepted, or to sacrifice your mental clarity just to feel temporarily seen. I'm not sending placeholders, I'm sending pillars. I'm releasing people, partnerships, opportunities, and environments that carry the same language as your purpose. You won't have to decipher intentions or walk on eggshells. You won't have to deserve to stay. You'll simply walk into places where your presence feels like home, not intrusion. So let today be the day you stop labeling the past season as a failure. It wasn't failure, it was preservation. It was me loving you too much to let you settle for almost. It was me interrupting your good enough because I'm still committed to giving you exceedingly more. And though I didn't give you answers back then, I'm giving you revelation now. What you lost didn't shrink your future, it expanded it. You've been prepared in ways you wouldn't have chosen, but that you will one day thank me for without hesitation. Now walk forward with your head held high, not because you understand it all, but because you trust the one who knows what's best. Your protection was not delayed justice, it was accelerated grace. You haven't been left behind. You've been kept safe for what's finally coming next, and it's better than anything you tried to hold on to. Rejection as a compass. Pause and absorb this truth. The moments they dismissed you were actually megaphone moments in heaven, amplifying my guidance clearer than any open door ever could. The no you heard reverberated like a cosmic yes to the path I laid out long before critics knew your name. Each cold shoulder and unanswered call felt like personal failure, yet in my ledger, it registered as proof you were precisely where I needed you. Not because you lacked worth, but because misplaced acceptance would have anchored you to sand while I was steering you toward bedrock. Rejection is uncomfortable only when measured by human metrics. In kingdom calculus, it's a neon sign pointing to sovereign orchestrations. Think of a ship at sea. Lighthouses don't guide with open gates. They guide with brilliant warnings signaling, "Not this way. Safe harbor lies elsewhere." Their refusal functioned the same. Misunderstanding, skepticism, and even mockery. They were all luminous beacons, edging you away from shores that would have stranded your mission. You felt the sting, I know. Nights replaying conversations, analyzing body language, wondering what you could have said differently to fit inside their shrinking circle. But from my viewpoint, those circles were cul-de-sacs, comfort zones dressed as destiny. Had they embraced you, you might have settled for applause instead of alignment, choosing grateful acceptance over a great assignment. I couldn't let that happen. I invested too much revelation in you to see it diluted by rooms committed to small thinking. So I let the door click shut. I let the invitation lapse. I let meetings end without follow-up. Not because I enjoyed your disappointment, but because I prized your future above your momentary comfort. If they had affirmed you, you would have tethered your self-worth to their approval, bending your originality to match their palate. But originality is oxygen for the vision I seeded in you, and suffocation was never an option. Their rejection, therefore, became a protective perimeter, an invisible fence ensuring you didn't graze in fields that would poison your distinct call. Understand, too, that every no extracted hidden gifts. Rejection mentored you in a resilience textbooks can't teach. It sharpened your discernment, enabling you to sense authenticity from a single heartbeat. It purified your motives, stripping away any desire to perform for claps and leaving only the fire to fulfill purpose for its own sake. The very pain that made you question your trajectory forged stamina for altitudes where thin air would otherwise dizzy untested souls. And while detractors speculated about your disappearance, I was busy equipping you in silence, embedding strategies you will soon deploy with seamless authority. They will wonder how you blossomed outside their greenhouse. You'll know it was the climate of consecration, soil watered by tears, sunlight filtered through my word, and air thinned by exclusion, that produced fruit with a flavor no hothouse could replicate. Now, watch the narrative shift. Eyes that once skimmed past you will widen when they encounter the evidence of my endorsement. A project succeeding beyond your resources, a platform growing without typical pathways, a peace radiating beyond circumstantial logic. Some will attempt re-entry, offering belated compliments. Welcome them graciously, but let discernment supervise proximity. Honor doesn't mandate access. Others will remain distant, nursing confusion where pride won't bend. Release them entirely. Your assignment isn't revenge, it's revelation. Every step you take in obedience spotlights my faithfulness, not their oversight. Let success become a sermon, not spite. As you advance, remember the principle. Rejection clarifies direction. Whenever another door closes, resist default despair. Instead, tilt your ear toward the resonance beneath the slam. Listen for my whisper guiding you to a superior terrain. Ask, what alignment does this protect? What calling does this preserve? Which hidden corridor opens because this public hall denied me? You'll find gratitude replacing regret and anticipation displacing agitation. Rejection then becomes a familiar wind in your sails, propelling rather than paralyzing. Finally, embrace the freedom that follows. You no longer need everyone's acceptance to validate your voice. Your compass is internal, tuned to my frequency. When people applaud, use humility. When they ignore, use resilience. Either way, keep moving. For every closed circle, I provide wide horizons. For every stage that refuses your song, I stretch landscapes where your melody reverberates uncontained. Their rejection was never your limitation. It was the clarion call confirming you were destined to travel a route too expansive for rooms content with echoes of yesterday. So lift anchor. My direction is sure, and the sea ahead is yours to navigate. Divine acceleration. Feel the sudden tug in your spirit, that inward surge like a river breaking past a dam, because I'm gripping the fabric of your timeline and thrusting it forward, overriding clocks that claimed you were late. What looks like you standing still while others sprint is an optical illusion. They are sprinting on treadmills powered by comparison, while I'm loading you into a chariot of purpose, propelled by eternal velocity. When people you started with post highlight reels of achievements and you wonder if the parade marched on without you, remember, I'm operating on coordinates not visible to conventional calendars. I'm drafting you into a fast track reserved for those who survived silence, pruning, and hidden preparation. In this divine acceleration, you'll sense opportunities arriving like compressed packages. Decisions that would typically require months will unfold in hours. Alliances you once pursued will pursue you. Resources once rationed will multiply without explanation. Do not equate rapid movement with chaos. This surge is calibrated, like a seasoned archer releasing an arrow at precisely the right breath. I withheld the release until wind, trajectory, and target aligned. Now every delay converts to momentum. Every disappointment transforms into jet fuel. The sensation may feel disorienting. Friendships you relied on may fade into the background as speed widens the gap. Familiar routines may blur into memory, and old metrics of success will prove useless at this altitude. Resist nostalgia's grasp. It cannot accompany you into corridors designed for unencumbered focus. I'm inviting you to travel light. Carry wisdom, faith, and flexibility, but discard the baggage of self-doubt, people-pleasing, and outdated goals. You will notice time bending. Projects once stalled will finalize overnight. Skills dormant within you will awaken as if rehearsed in secret. Ideas incubating for years will crystallize in minutes. This is not favoritism. It's the fulfillment of promises incubated in patience. While others measured progress in visible milestones, I was cultivating unseen depth in you. Character, resilience, discernment, so acceleration wouldn't fracture your foundation. And when observers say, "How did they leap so far so fast?" your only explanation will be grace. That grace mandates stewardship. Guard your Sabbath amid velocity. Anchor yourself in private worship that regulates your pace, and refuse shortcuts that compromise integrity. Speed without surrender devolves into spiraling. Surrender turns velocity into victory. As I pull you ahead, echoes of "too late" will fade behind you, like scenery viewed from a bullet train. Opportunities you thought missed were actually reserved, waiting for your arrival at this precise maturity. Trust my grip. It never slips. I'm not yanking you into exhaustion, but ushering you into synchronization with a heavenly rhythm. Breathe, lean forward, and let the rush of purpose carry you, because far from being left behind, you are right now overtaking the very doubts that once tried to anchor you to yesterday. Amen. My beloved child, don't let this moment pass unnoticed. There's someone who needs to hear exactly what you've just received. What was spoken today was not random. It was divine timing. The days are growing shorter, but your light is growing stronger. You've been set apart, not to hide, but to shine. You are part of something unshakable, something eternal. If this message found its way into your soul, subscribe and come back. We're building something eternal, one truth at a time. Share this with someone walking through confusion. Help them find clarity. Until we gather again, walk in grace, speak with purpose, and live each day as one awakened by truth. Amen.